Hello, today we are here to discuss Cities of Venus Lost Contact. This is the most recent iteration of this that came in Kickstarter. I think you said that it was dated back a
In
ways.
2022, and I didn't see any difference between the two, so this just might be a reprinting.
Yeah, because this just came in for me in the last like week or so. So before we get into any further discussion on this, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and if you like the video, like button as well.
Right.
So you can follow along on all of our exploits, hijinks, and ne'er-do-well activities in space.
While we're in space, yeah. But we're not pigs
Yeah.
in space.
No.
We're just people.
Yep.
And I apologize up front. I'm wearing my Pluto shirt, not my Venus shirt.
Oh, yeah.
But, but it's a very cool shirt because this is when Pluto no longer was a planet, and it's like
the protest shirt.
Yeah, it's a protest shirt, so it's quite cool.
Whereas
so,
I'm wearing my skeletons, which is what you'd be if you were on Venus, actually.
or Pluto.
Yeah. Or Pluto, for that matter, yeah.
So.
All right, Rob, what can you tell us about
All right,
this
so
game?
Cities of Venus Lost Contact. So the information I found is related to the 2022 release, but like I said, I tried to look. I didn't really see a whole lot of difference between the two versions. Overall rank is 18,256 with an individual rating of 7.0. Now, depending on which version you get, will change player count. So the Kickstarter version, if you bought, like, it's not really like it's an expansion, but they called it that, changes it 2 to 6 player. But the normal version is 2 to 4. It does play in 45 to 90 minutes, ages 8 and up, which I think is pretty accurate. It's a pretty light game. Designed by James and Adam Staley. There was no artist listed, which I'm surprised because the art's pretty good. Published by 10 Robot Games. Now, MSRP, I could only find the Kickstarter price, which was at $98. But I did go online. 10 Robot is selling, I guess you would call it the retail version, which is the 2 to 4 player for $44.99. I went and found on the Geek Market and a couple other websites is also selling it anywhere between $50 to $70. And there was an eBay one for $75, but it's all the 2 to 4 player version. I cannot find anyone selling the 2 to 6 player version.
Okay, so yeah, this is the all-in 2 to 6 player version.
And the main difference I found was the minis.
Yeah.
So the minis with this and the first player, but I think everything else is, including the player boards, is in the retail.
Okay. So as far as quality of components, this is really top-notch.
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, the cards are linen finish. They have a nice feel to them.
Decent thickness.
Yeah, the only complaint I would have on the cards is I'm not sure if sleeves would work in this game because you slide them into your player board.
And they fit pretty tight in the board.
Yeah. If you put sleeves on it, you may have alignment issues, and or they may just not fit at all. The playmat is really nice. It does bubble a little bit because it's folded and put into the box. But I like when playmats actually fit in the box.
Agreed.
Because I've got so many playmats and I never think to use them because
they get they don't get lost, but they get so mixed with everything else, and then you completely forget that there's even a playmat.
Exactly. The player boards are really cool.
I really like the player boards.
They have the slots for sliding the cards in that are upgrades for each of the different components. Your money, if you will, in the game is actually your astronauts or V-Nauts, they call them. So you assign them to different areas of your ship, and then they do different, have different functions depending on where they are. And
then you got the V-Knight.
Yeah, the V-Knight is like the crystals. These are spent also as kind of a different form of money to buy cards in the middle of the game.
And they're just different values, so that's the only difference.
They give you these craters to store the V-Knights in, and they give you a big rocket ship for the V-Naughts, which, I guess they gave you 6 of those to spread them out if you're playing a bigger game than two
Yeah, I thought of that, but other than the black V-Naughts, I don't think there's enough to really spread the other 2 types.
Well, yeah.
And I think
there's actually two of these.
I think there's definitely enough of the V-Naughts to actually spread on. You get a ton.
Yeah.
Because we have another almost full bag of those that we didn't use.
Yeah, these are when they're really
So
tiny.
that makes sense if you're doing the 2 to 6 player, because that allows you to kind of
get they give you a ton of those V-Nauts, which you're going to need for a 6-player game.
For sure.
The dice are amazing. They're two-toned.
They're beautiful.
Yeah, they look like ones you would buy in a, these alone would be like $15, $20.
Well, like something you would buy in a game store.
Yeah. Or a dice specialty booth at one of the conventions. And the miniatures they're
look
breathtaking.
Cool.
Yeah. They don't have much function. We'll get to that later.
Really very little function, but they look cool.
Yeah, this one looks like a robotic arm holding a pole, but when you put it near
it looks like a scroll. Yeah, it's holding a scroll tube.
The first player marker, but it really looks like a desk lamp. So you put it, it's like, who gets a desk lamp of destiny over here? But everybody also has a driller for the mining, and these you put the die in the back. It fits tight, really tight, in the back. And there's an area for you to assign a V-knot to, but you're going to discard the V-knot. Yeah, it looks awesome, but you're not going to use it because it's like after a while, it's like annoying to put the thing in there because you discard the V-knot.
I did it like 2 times.
Yeah,
and then I just immediately took my V-knot from a board and put it in the discard bin.
And then you roll the die. You don't bother to put it back. So
completely useless, but they look great.
Yeah, and I think they have like a slight stain on them too. They're not just pure.
Well, especially on that, not so much on this one, but for the first player marker, there's a stain to it. It looks really neat.
So, I mean, they just went all out on this.
They really did.
I can't think of the way they could have upgraded this. I'm going to give it a 10.
Yeah, I think a 10 would. I think a 10 is a good score.
I didn't
and the box is the way it opens is awesome.
Yeah, the top of this opens up with the planet over here. That's actually metal.
Yeah, you almost want to hear like some kind of angelic choir sound because it's like.
And this opens up as a flap.
If it had LED lights in there as it lit up, it'd been perfect.
Man, it can smell like the new game smell. And there's a plastic topper to put on this to keep all your pieces in place. And there's custom fits molding for all the storage.
It's a beautiful presentation of it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even realize that was made of metal. I mean, that's awesome. This is definitely a 10 as far as production quality. As far as theme goes, the idea is you are a developer of a colony, floating city outside Venus, and you're getting shipments regularly from Earth, but for some reason you've lost contact with the Earth. There's still shipments underway, but you don't know when those shipments are going to stop.
Right.
And that's represented in the deck by a series of level 1, level 2, level 3, and then within the level 3 deck, you shuffle the Earth card in, and that triggers the end of the game, but you don't know when it's going to come up. Right. It could come up as the first level 3 card, or it could be the last one, or anywhere in the middle. So, that's why you don't know when the game's going to end. So you got to kind of plan for levels 1 and 2 when you're going through, and just
as
hope
soon
for
as
the
level
best.
3 starts, then you're like, okay, it'd be any day.
Yeah. So the theme of this fits the gameplay.
I think so. Yeah, I think, and the artwork really
the
fits
art
the
is
theme.
beautiful.
It's very nice.
Yeah, the color scheme is amazing,
and the components help with the theme too.
Yeah.
So the V-knots are, I think they're very simple, but they're very cool.
Yeah,
at the same time. So I really liked it, and I do think the components fit the theme as well.
Yeah, and I love the purple V-Knight. I mean, it's the most rare. I mean, if you will, because they have values of 1, 4, and 8, which is kind of odd, but it makes sense in the sense that each round you can buy a V-Knot with 4 money, for V-Knight. So, and the dice, of course, we talked about those. The colors of those are just beautiful. I think, as far as theme goes, it's not a heavy story on this. Apart from that, everything else is beautiful. Because of that, I'll probably give it an 8.5 to 9.
Yeah, I was going to say 8.5 to 9 just because there really isn't much of a story to it. I mean, it is a neat little intro story, and it kind of makes sense, but that's it.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing mechanically that kind of fits with that theme. Just beautiful artwork.
All right, so those are the high scores. Now let's start talking about the other stuff. So we have the rule book. So the rule book is quick to get you into the game in the sense that it's 12 pages long. I was expecting this to be a lot heavier of a game. I was expecting it to be, it's got these big miniatures. I thought they were going to have functionality. Right. So I was expecting a 20 to 30 page rule book. And I get it, and it's a 12-page rule book, but really, when you come down to it,
it's all text.
It's all text. There's very few pictures. There's a few icons. And there are a few pictures in here, but
not much.
They don't really serve much purpose. The rules go from page 2 because they start. Well, it's really page 1 is started on page 2. They don't count the cover. There are no quantity or pictures of the components,
which is always frustrating.
Yeah, so you don't know if you got everything or not. which is very, very annoying. And there's no pictures of, because you're going through, there's references to things, and it's like, okay, what is that? Because
and then how did we find out about the V-Night values?
I had to go online.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you would think that would be in the rule book. And we probably looked a solid 10 minutes trying to find out what the value of the V-Nights were and couldn't find it at all.
Yeah, so there's 1s, 4s, and 8s.
And when you mentioned it, as far as the rule saying that a V-Naught's worth 4 V-Night, it made sense.
Yeah.
But I didn't connect those dots.
But even then, like, what color is what? You know?
Right.
I mean, obviously, there's more black of the crystals than any of the other ones, so that seemed
makes
like
sense
that would be
simple.
the ones. But yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to know. Also, we didn't know if if they even had monetary value, if they were like some kind of scarcity thing. And when we got into playing the game, we were going to find this card requires you to use 1 white crystal or 3 pink. But there was nothing to tell you any of that information in the rule book.
And the fact that we wasted a good 10 minutes looking for something that wasn't even there.
Yeah, I mean, the steps are well spelled out throughout the rulebook of the gameplay, but you have a little cheat sheet that kind of tells you how to step through it.
And it worked because it helped us remind each area of the game. And then, because once you get down a turn, you'll know all the steps super well. But it just reminds you the order, which is important.
Yeah. But then even that, they left off the acquisition of the innovations cards. And then on the back is the end-game scoring, which is helpful. Just guide you through that. They have an app supposedly that makes things easier to score. It's not that hard to score to begin with.
It really isn't.
But the app uses white on white. So the text is all white. If you type, it's white on white, and you can't read that at all.
No.
It's hard enough to read the title of what you're trying to do because it's white on white.
So we just use our calculators.
So we just use calculators, or we could use a pad paper.
A pad paper or something, because it wasn't a massively high-scoring game either.
No, so the app was completely useless, and I don't know why the color decision was made.
You would think that some beta testing or something would have brought that out.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing was the iconography. So the cards they have names, but there's no names on the cards.
Right.
It's in the rule book, and it refers to them by name. It says, like, if you're not playing the advanced game, to remove this specific card by name.
And it took us forever
to figure out
what card they were talking about.
Yeah, because it does show a really tiny picture of an icon of an atom with a lock in it.
But there's those atoms icons on lots of different cards.
And it turns out the card that it was on that really was it.
Yeah,
it was the big icon down in the middle, but it wasn't an atom card.
And I didn't even see the lock. Was the lock on?
Yeah, the lock.
Okay, I didn't even see the lock, but still.
Yeah, they just relied on you, and if you didn't notice that little lock, if you have poor eyesight, you didn't we do obviously,
right?
And you didn't notice that lock.
You probably would have never.
Yeah, you would have been spending a lot of time just trying to figure out. I went online searching for that answer because I thought, this seems like it would be an obvious question somebody would have had. No, there was nobody that had asked that question. So I guess everybody has great eyesight who's played this game because it took us a long time. But we didn't,
and it took us another good 10, 15 minutes to figure it out.
And then there were the icons themselves. There's cards, like the events are all spelled out pretty much in here. But we got an event that was not in the list.
Not even close.
Yeah, and it's all based on iconography. Well, here's the event list, and it was not in there at all.
The iconography wasn't in it.
That icon is over here on a different page 5, way back here. But it's not about the event. It's about what happens when you see that icon, presumably on one of the cards.
Right.
So if you saw that icon, but even that was not the complete picture. There was other stuff associated with it. So we had to infer what that meant, which is always frustrating when you're trying to play a game, especially the new game that you're trying to play for the first time. And again, we looked online, nobody had a question about that.
Which that in of itself, I think, is kind of odd, because usually there's a pretty good community forum with the newer board games, especially the Kickstarter's Game Founds, of people figuring this stuff out. Well, and we found very little.
It may have been, well, there were a few questions, but it may have been a question, but I didn't know how to phrase it because it didn't have a name on the card. If there was a card reference name, it would have made it much easier to actually type in.
Or if they did card numbers or something.
And it's like you can't put the icon on there, so it's like what what does the card with the little person with the circle around them mean? I mean, where with a trade of 3, it didn't make any sense. Why it's in there. So yeah, the rule book is lacking a lot.
Yes.
And given that, I can't give
it felt like they worked too hard to try and make it a small quick rule book and just really left too much out.
Yeah, way too much out. I'm probably going to give this a 3.5.
Oh yeah, it was frustrating.
Yeah. Moving on to gameplay. So the gameplay in this, it's I was expecting it to be a difficult game, or not difficult, but
once
medium to medium.
Yeah, once I saw the play mat, I wasn't expecting a whole lot of complexity, but I was expecting more than what we got.
Yeah, especially with all these pieces. I mean, I don't like the term overproduced.
This game is overproduced.
This game, for what it is definitely overproduced.
Which I even then I don't mind saying that, because I like overproduced games.
I love really nice pieces.
I mean, it really makes the piece snob of you very happy.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, the meat of the game doesn't fit the component quality.
Right. So basically, at the beginning of the game, you're going to have a starting set of your little V-knots in specific locations. Right. Which is not on the board, which would have been very useful to have.
And the V-knots is basically your money.
Yeah, for most purposes.
For the most purposes, it's basically your money.
Yeah. So there's a basically in the rule book, it tells you in one place in the book, and if you're skimming the book, you're not going to find it. But it does tell you how many you're starting.
Because we thought it was just an X number in one section. That was it. But there's actually like 4 sections.
Yeah, 4 sections. You got some, and we ended up watching a video online about how to play, and that's how we found it.
I think the designer was talking about the game, and that's how we figured it out.
So by player order, then you're going to first determine who's first player. They're going to get the first player token.
They get the decimal.
Whoever's after that gets one of the V Knights to start the game, and each person thereafter gets one more. So it'd be 2, 3, 4, and so on. So you're then going to deal out from the central deck, which would normally start with 1.
It's called the cloud drop.
The cloud drop. So these are incoming shipments from Earth.
And they're called canisters.
And depending on player count, it can go up to 7. So if you're playing with 5 or 6, there's 7. And anything less, it's 5.
Right.
And you're going to then, after that, go stepping through this. So the next thing is resolve events. So when you put the cloud drops out, some of them will have yellow triangles on them. If they have a yellow triangle, then that triggers an event. Mm-hmm. Depending on what level the card's at, it is going to determine how many events. So the maximum you can do is 1. Even if there's 4 triangles
for
at level
stage
1,
1,
you're going to have 1.
Yeah. Stage 2, you get 2 events. Stage 3, 3 events.
Right. But you have to have that many triangles too. So it's the combination of triangle count and the level you're at. So you're going to trigger that many events. It's supposedly the events are mostly bad. We saw about a 50-50 split.
Yeah. I mean, and even the bad ones weren't terrible.
No. Mostly they cost you V-Knights or V-Knots.
Yeah, V-Knots and V-Knights. And you remove those from the game, from your board first, which can then make payment of dropping your shields or something else that you may have to do as far as upkeep a little bit more difficult.
And anytime you're required to drop or give up something and you don't have that item, you have to give up 2 of the V-Knots from other places instead. So you're paying twice as much. Right. So it's best to keep some distribution of V-Knots in every area.
Especially in the shield area, because you're always dropping shields.
Yeah, every round.
No matter what.
Yeah, because the theory is Venus has got a harsh terrain.
Yeah, the acid.
And the acid is burning through your shield, so you have to keep maintaining them. Right. So then after that, the nice thing about this game is most of it's played simultaneously. Mm-hmm. So after you drop the shields by 1 V-Knot, then you're going to grow your population, and that's going to be by looking at the combination of your food and your water and air supply. Yep. Those 2 units, you take the lower of the 2 number of how many V-Knots you have there, and that's how many new V-Knots are brought into your population. So if you had 5 in one, 4 in the other, you would get 4. Right. And you can distribute those however you please on your board. as you're doing that, at the end of after you deployed, you can take 2 VNaughts from anywhere on your board and send them to your remote space station, which they can hold up to 8. This is how you acquire innovations. So once you fill this up with 8 of them, you immediately are going to spend all 8, and you're going to acquire one of the innovation cards, which basically are similar to the cards that
I didn't really see a whole lot of reason to really kind of focus on those, because the cards I was getting for the canisters either were worth just as much, if not more points. And it still had limiting factors. So
they don't cost you any resources per se, but you had to focus 8 people.
You still had to get rid of VNaught, so it's still a resource.
So those cards are going to slide into your board at least in most cases.
Right. And you can only have, I guess, let's call them an upgrade. You can only have one upgrade equipped. So if you get another upgrade for that same part of the station, you got to replace it.
Right. And in most cases, even if it's got victory points, you just lose them.
Right.
Supposedly there's an upgrade or some cards that lets you keep them, but we never found it. As you're doing your gaining of your people, your VNaughts, you're going to then also do the innovation. And this is kind of breaks away from the consecutive play or
the simultaneous
concurrent play. You have to stop, and whoever in turn order acquire innovations if more than one person are doing it. So then after that, you're going to take any city actions you might have. So some of the upgrades from either the drops or supposedly the innovations are going to give you actions that you can trigger. We didn't ever see any of them. But they mostly are like trading things or moving things about.
And most of what we saw is just kind of little upgrades of either reducing costs or mainly that, just reducing costs or protecting you or increasing storage.
And they give you victory points too. Sometimes you have to sacrifice, like, I was getting 7 storage for my people, which normally defaults at 6 from the upgrade, but to get 4 victory points, I had to reduce it to 2.
Right.
But at the end of the game, it doesn't matter so much. Then after that, you're going to pay and install. If you have any reserved canisters, which are the drop shipments, each round you have the option of taking one and putting it into your storage during the last phase of the round. So the first round of the game, you're not going to have any cards in your reserve. But you could potentially after round 1 and round 2 and subsequent rounds, if you didn't have the resources to pay for it, you can put it in layaway in essence.
And which is kind of neat. It only increases the cost by 1.
Yeah, but it's one mechanic specifically.
But if you don't use those by the end of the game, then you'll lose
victory points. And then you can mine, which is the most common thing you're going to do. You're going to assign someone from your drill section to your drill, and you're going to roll a die, and you're going to get that many.
And I agree with Randy. When we were first doing it, it kind of gives us the Anachrony vibes from the minis, where you put the dude in it, and then you would roll the die. But basically, you just take the dude, spend it, and roll the die.
Yeah, so the robot is almost problematic because they get stuck in there tight with their die, and not so much the meeple. But
and then whatever you roll, that's how much VNaughts you get.
Yeah.
And then, like Randy said, they're 1, 4, and 8. So if you roll a 6, you get 6 VNaught.
Yeah.
Randy had a really nice little upgrade where he had +1 VNaught.
Yeah. So well, it was VNaught. VNaughts. I get the terms confused, but VNaughts. So I was able to add. I rolled a 6 one time and got 7. That was the best I ever did. You had the option to reroll.
Yeah, I had the option to reroll, which was nice, but like the 5 times I did it, I always rolled lower than what I rolled, getting better. So I went from a 3 to a 1, for example.
And then you also, here is where you can recruit 1 VNaught for 4 VNaught, and you can do that once per round. So after that is step 6, and this is where we have to go in turn order again, and this is acquiring these cargo drops from Earth. So they have a cost on one side of the card. They have a section in the upper left corner that tells you where you're can deploy them at. And then they have a new limit for how many VNaughts you can have in the area.
It might be an increase or it could be a decrease.
Or it could be the same. And sometimes they will have an icon in the middle that is going to, they've actually cut a nice little hole that works perfectly. They align perfectly when you slide them in, that shows you what icon is active. And those icons, we didn't find a problem with. Those were all in the book.
Pretty self-explanatory too.
So, but it would have been nice to have those on a cheat sheet.
Yeah, the only one that we had a little bit of confusion on was the innovations, where most of them protect you from the events.
Yeah, but that was in the rule books.
Yeah, but I mean, that was the only one I think that was we couldn't clearly see what it was.
So, as far as the gameplay, that's all there is to the game. You play until Earth shows up in the central row, and when that does, you finish that round,
and that's it.
And that's it. So, I was expecting a lot more in this game than what we got. Now, there is a whole series of Cities of Venus games that are coming out. They've got like basically little blurbs about them. It'd be nice if there was any indication that these games could be intertwined.
Right.
Because then I would feel better about this purchase. Because as is, I don't think we're going to get much play out of this game.
Yeah, and I was really hoping if they do connect, like kind of like Century, how Century, where game 1 and then game 2 came out, and then you could combine it to make an altogether different game.
Yeah.
With those mechanics combined. And that would be really neat. You don't see that very often.
Yeah, it's frustrating because this is so beautiful.
Oh, it really is.
It just feels like it missed the mark on having the play. I mean, there's just not much to it. And
in Board Game you said light to medium. This is not light to medium. This is just light.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to interpret these rules,
that's true.
Yeah, I mean that's where the medium part comes in. That's the most of the gameplay is figuring out the rules. Once you get playing the game, it's super fast, and it's like, okay, that's all there is with all these advanced pieces, and I mean, it looks beautiful on the table, but I don't think it's going to get on the table.
Wanting more.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to get on the table much.
I think Miranda should play it at least once so that she can get an impression of the game. But I think she'll be the same way. Once she gets that one play out, she'll be like, okay, that'll be it.
Because, I mean, it definitely needs more. And there's definitely room for expansion on
for sure.
But, I mean, the easy, obvious expansion is adding more cards, but that's not going to really
help
fix the problems. The problem is the cards it's a one-trick pony.
Yeah, they need more elements.
And the score differential there's not much points for scoring in this game.
Right.
I think will beat you 34 to 28 or something like that. And that's about all you're going to do. And the other thing is, 2 of the categories for scoring, you get 2 bonus points, are for having the most of the 2 other scoring categories. So if you're playing 2
you're
players,
going to get the other.
If we're playing 2-player, if you get 1, you're going to get both. And I got both, so I got 4 net of my victory points were just from doing the same thing that I already did. I hate when they have games that do that kind of thing, because it's basically a double whammy.
Yeah.
And, if you've already lost the game because of that, it does nothing more to
It
help.
just kind of needles it a little bit more.
Yeah, it's like, haha, I jab you again for that same thing. So I just think there could have been so much more with this. And it's kind of, it needs more gameplay.
It needs more game.
And it's frustrating when you look at this on the table and you're just like, oh, I really want to touch these pieces.
The table presence is amazing.
So, as far as my score, I'm probably going to give this a 5.5.
I can't do much higher than that for the exact same reasons. There's just not enough to the game, but when you look at it, you want it to be so much more. And because there's not that there, even if the basic game was fun, just not a lot there, the component quality is just so high, you expect more.
Yeah.
And with it not being there, it's disappointing. That might be kind of a bad way of looking at it, but that's just a fact.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this and it draws you in.
Absolutely.
I mean, the bright colors on the planets,
the artwork, the components, everything,
the tactile feel of everything. It's just beautiful. And then you get in here and it's like, that's all there is.
Yeah.
And, it's.
So I can't go any higher than a 5.5 either.
All right. Well, that's our thoughts on Cities of Venus. It's kind of a disappointment, but
a little bit. But hopefully Chronicle 2 might add something. And
I'm hoping that they find some way to
and
integrate them. But I would have thought if it were, they would have put something in there in the rules where the ad was to say all these games can be intertwined.
Because that would be an excellent selling point.
They're all part of the series.
Yeah, maybe just a storyline.
Yeah.
Part of it.
So, all right. Well, if you've got a chance to play this, let us know what you think.
Yeah, exactly. I would really like to know what you thought. Maybe we're just far off and we're just old curmudgeons and it just didn't, meet our expectation. But what did you think of it?
All right. And if you've ever been to a city in Venus or on Venus, you probably need to seek help.
Or if you have drill robots, I want to see them.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That'd be very cool.
All right. Well, until next time, you guys keep on mining and we'll keep on playing. Bye.